Welcome to another episode of Simon Says, where facts come first. I'm your host, Jenny Simon. And as per usual, we have a little bit of current affairs and we get down to the meat of the matter. Grab your popcorn, your Coke, your drink, whatever it is, your kids, your tablets, your medication. Call your auntie, your nene, your uncle, your cousin, your brother, your sister. Tell them that Simon Says is on. Buckle up. We'll be right back. Thank you for tuning in to Simon Says. To ensure that you never miss an episode, click subscribe and make sure to turn on the notifications by clicking on the notification bell icon. See you at the next episode. So the first thing, we have an update on the UK. So we know they're listening, right? They're listening and they're working with us. They're working with us. Only it's too far gone with the corruption, and the corruption going to expose them. So they're not working with us with the corruption. They continue in the corruption. However, since we last spoke of the High Commission for Grenada, London, United Kingdom, I have another update for you. They are relocating again. Only this time they have put out a release. So now y'all I don't have to search for them for y'all and update y'all. They have put out a release this time. So you guys can know exactly where to find them. And it reads, the High Commission of Grenada, London, United Kingdom, notice relocation of the Grenada High Commission in London. We're moving. The High Commission for Grenada wishes to inform the public that the mission will be relocating to 45 Bedford Row, WCIR 4LN, effectively July the 1st, 2025. To facilitate the relocation, routine counselor services will be temporarily suspended from Thursday the 26th June at 1200 hours until Tuesday the 8th July 2025. Normal operating hours will resume on Tuesday the 8th July 2025 at 900 hours. For emergencies, we can be contacted by telephone number 07375330696 or email office@grenada.highcommission.com UK. Please be reminded that appointments are required for counselor services, which can be made by visiting our website. We sincerely regret any inconveniences this may cause and look forward to continuing to serve you at our new location near Holborn. High Commission of Grenada, London, UK, United Kingdom. So, Simon Says we'll keep you updated on the next move of the commission. Stay tuned. The school feeding program. Now, this is something close to me, dear to my heart, and I've been bringing it to you time and time again because hungry brains can't function. And we know that not all kids are fortunate enough to get a hot meal before they leave home to go to school, and during the day to get a hot meal at lunchtime. And the government of Grenada, the previous government of Grenada, had set up a school feeding program where parents would send $1 a day. And the adults, like the teachers and so on, I think they paid like $5 a day. And some parents would send more than $1, the ones that can afford it. Sometimes also it's for convenience as well. $1 a day, right? And of course, the Ministry of Education would give a subvention towards it as well. But when they need a tin of milk, for instance, they could purchase it at the corner store because they're collecting the $1 a day. When they need a pound of chicken, they can purchase the chicken, right? When the ministry is not on time, right? They have that little bit of monies there that they can use. Perhaps they have arrived. And in an effort to tick boxes, they say they're giving free school feeding program. So the parents don't have to send the $1 anymore. And they cannot afford to keep the program going. They cannot afford. So days, weeks, months, some of the schools have no food to feed the children. So there are kids that are going to school without 2 meals. And God knows if they have a third one when they get home. Right? And that was the purpose of the program. In an MTV clip, we hear the president of the union, Teacher Jude, all hot and sweaty. This thing been going on for months now, you know. Almost ever since they changed the program. And just to take a box, to say they give free school feeding program.
This statement came following questions raised, complaints made, and actions taken by the schools to cease the program. The program is a government initiative and in recent years has come under the microscope as non-functional in some schools. The president of the Grenada Union of Teachers, Jude Bartholomew, says it is a good program which minimizes daily costs for both parents and teachers.
Now, let me say that the lunch program is a good program. The intention of the government is to ensure, so well intent and well intended. So I want you to hear me clearly, right? Well intent, well intended. And for that aspect, children, when you have that program, then there is no excuse for a parent to say, well, their children can't come to school or child because they don't have lunch. And so if you're hungry in a classroom, you can't get food to eat, then you cannot learn effectively. And so that is a good thing. It really and truly saving the parents. So what the government shows is that basically every child should have an equal right to education and get equal opportunities. So there is no more excuse a parent could say that you come in, I can't send my child to school. Harry can't come today because he didn't have lunch.
The program, well intended, but according to the president, it needs to be properly structured in order to be effectively executed. The teaching faculties, he says, are complaining about the program's structure.
They are complaining, and where the problem is that we find there is a weakness there. Probably what the government should do before announcing the program is to meet with teachers, meet with principals, meet with the GUT. The union is not the enemy of the state. And so probably there might be something that you did not see. And the union, the teachers might have been able to say to you, do it that way. To don't have a lunch, a school feeding program for everybody. Because if you have it for everybody, there are some persons who are already now dependent on the school feeding program. So what the government has done, although it is well intended, is put some pressure on schools.
Bartholomew says the government has not been contributing the resources in a timely manner to the schools.
Now the problem is where schools are saying that the government are not paying the monies on time. Months upon months, and they cannot get the check. And so where the school getting that money now? Where is the government cut down on a lot of things for registration, a lot of things like that, so you can't get the money that you used to take to buy something else. Remember the school feeding program before? It used to be $1, you know. So that was a kind of savings. What school used to do, principals and teachers, they had to hold their head. Because things not coming, the fish and the chicken and the rice and the different things, not coming regularly in school.
Some schools, Bartholomew says, cannot facilitate the program as they do not have the necessities.
And what the government should have done, there isn't really the infrastructure for this big program. Some schools don't really have the fridge or the stove or the storage area facilities and those things. So I think the program is well intended and it could be better. right? There is room for improvement. So if the schools and the Ministry of Education sit down together with the union and say, we see some weaknesses here in the school feeding program, and principals are crying out, we want you to fix it and such. But let the record be clear that that is a good program for the government of Grenada in terms of feeding the nation's children, most of the times poor people children, to make it equal for everybody.
For MTV News, Rachel Bain.
Thank you, MTV. If it ain't broken, don't fix it. Nothing was wrong with the program as is. And of course, in order to tick another box, they said free school, tuition. So you don't have to pay for registration, and you don't have to pay all the little fees the school collected, even for the security for cleaning. They stop it, and they cannot keep it up. They broke. We $90 million short in revenue for the first quarter of 2025. $90 million short in revenue. Things bad. Things grimy. And they cannot keep up the program. But the program was running okay. Of course, like everything else, it might have been little ups and downs. The ministry might have been late sometimes, as I said, with their check. But if they're late, then they have a little bit of kakada to tap into. The dollar a day, $1 a day. Y'all didn't do no kind of survey. Y'all didn't do no kind of planning, no strategy, nothing. Y'all didn't check on nothing. Just free school feeding program. Yay! And y'all putting it on all kind of thing out there as checking boxes. Look at it now. Look at it now. A total failure. And our school children are going to school hungry and remaining in school hungry if their parents can't afford to get up, prepare breakfast for them, and to prepare lunch to send them to school. A hungry brain cannot function. Cannot function. The whole place crumbling in front of our eyes, before our eyes now. All you mash up education, the Ministry of Education, in scraps, just with all your nonsense to say all the ticking boxes. Eh? Well, the best was the Minister of Finance, you know. He, on to the point, this past week, I just love his explanation for servicing the school feeding program.
Energize the school feeding program, although some people have it as though we have to do everything for ourselves. The schools, the principals, the teachers, the parents, they all have to get involved to make sure that works. It does not depend on the parliamentarians only to have it done. There's a lot of collaboration that needs to get done. The shopkeepers, the farmers, you have the supplies in the fields and so on. We could talk about it, but if the people don't go out and get it, it won't happen.
Everyone should actually play a part.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
So the farmers who have the excess in the field after they have sold to the market and export whatever remains and so on, they need to basically organize the other players in the game to basically make sure that we can get the bananas, the gospel, the limes, the orange, the golden apples, whatever fruits that we have outside, the mangoes. Look, right now, mango is spoiling out the place. Get it into schools.
Calling one and all, bring your mango, your banana, your gospel, your lime. So it's a community thing now. It's a village thing. So the village should organize the mangoes, the gospels, the banana, whatever you have, and bring it to the schools. And that's okay. That can be done. But you cannot, it's not sustainable. You cannot sit down and wait for if a farmer have extra gospel or extra lime to bring to the school. No. The dollar was working. The dollar was working. So then why didn't you just allow the $1 a day per child so that the lunch program could continue? Why remove it? Why talk about free food, free school feeding program? And now you all want to gather troops in order to feed the children. If you say the government is giving free school feeding, then you have to provide. What do you say? You all energized. You just said it. You all energized the school feeding program. To kill it is to energize it? Because that's what you did. You killed it. What energize you talking about? But I could understand. Because if you guys say you're doing well at this stage, at this rate you're going, and you continue to say you're doing well, I could understand your meaning of well and energize. Dead. Dead. Kill it dead. Right? Schools, the principals, gather the principals, the parents, all must get involved. What does that mean? They were involved. They are involved. But you all mash it up. Right? To make sure that it works. Who has to make sure that it works? You all have to make sure that it works. It was your idea to do the free school feeding program. They cannot depend, and it's rude, they cannot depend on the parliamentarians only to get it done. Who depending on the parliamentarians? The parliamentarians can't even do their job in their constituencies. Why would we depend on parliamentarians for the school feeding program? It's a program through the Ministry of Education, by extension the government of Grenada, right? And the Ministry of Education, nobody depending on the parliamentarians. We already noticed that it's a failed administration with these parliamentarians and senators that you guys have in the cabinet of Grenada. A simple school feeding program that was there, that you all met. You all couldn't continue. That mash up. You guys are jokers. The program was running fairly well without the involvement of parliamentarians. Now you're calling on shopkeepers and farmers to bring supplies. Mango and gospel. Well, what next? I mean, this is totally embarrassing. The incompetence that comes from you guys. It's just not funny anymore. Simon says it's calling a no confidence motion. No confidence in this administration. And I await the opposition of this country, His Majesty's opposition, to stand up and call out this administration for their incompetence and the way they govern, for lack of a better word, or the lack of governance, should I say, of this country. How much longer are we going to put up with this? How much longer? Moving along, the great Django man. Oh, all you. Django Ian Thomas put out a post on Facebook, just because I mentioned again last week about the vehicle that Ron Redhead stole and sold. That, right? Didn't belong to him. Django posted saying that he stole it, literally. It was him that stole the vehicle. Now, the vehicle was loaned to Ron Redhead by Miss McQueen, and he sold it. His advisor at the time, Ian Django Thomas, was partner in crime, of course. Lotto was paying this Django guy $5,000 per month to be advisor to Ron. And of course, when Lacret came in, Lacret sent him packing. He wasn't advising nothing. If you speak to anybody in the ministry, they said he would walk in, strut around, sit down at Ron's desk when Ron's not there, and then leave, collecting $5,000 from the lottery authority. So he then decided now that he would say, for whatever reason, that he stole the car and sell it. Now I'm going to get the post for you, because sometimes I swear y'all might think I'm making up this thing. But let me get it here for you. Where's my thing? I should pull it up. So Mr. Michael Batiste posted about some of the corruption and included that in it, right? And Ian Django Thomas decided he's going to post here. Michael Batiste, no MP sold Rolanda McQueen vehicle. I, Ian Django Thomas, sold that vehicle. Police should lock him up. They should lock him up because it's a crime. They committed a crime. And I must say to Ron, you have a friend in this crook. You really do have a friend. But those who assemble resemble, right? Yes, I know Django introduced the gentleman to Ron. I mean, I know it. I have the facts. I spoke to the gentleman, right? Django introduced the gentleman to Ron. I also know that you ask for cash, that is Ron and Django by his side, for cash from the gentleman when you went to his house after 11 in the night, busy, wanting the cash for the $10,000. And the gentleman said to you guys that, I don't keep this kind of cash at home, but I can give you a check. You accepted the check. The check was written in Ron Redhead's name, $10,000 in Ron Redhead's name, which he deposited on his account. How is it now it's you, Django, that sell the car? Why didn't say that when the police was trying to find all your... Why didn't say that then that the police lock you up? Now you figure I die, all the money paid back. You're coming up now and say, it's you that sell it, right? I know the whole story. Django, you can't cover up. You can, and you're trying your best now to do damage control and cover up. There ain't no covering up taking place there. The only time monkey realized the size of its behind is when it swallowed the plum seed. So now you're realizing and trying to cover up. Ain't gonna happen. Ain't gonna happen. Now, I also know that when you spoke to the gentleman, you, Django, you told him that we could sell the car for $10,000 and we could make a money on it when you resell it, and we go share it. I know that too. I know that too. You like to raise ants' nest. Some of these things I didn't even talk about, but I could talk about it now. Since you're proudly saying it's you that sold the car. I know what you told the guy. I also know how much the guy sold the car for, $31,000. I know if you get, I know if you get something out of it, right? Y'all crooked. Y'all bad mind. And we have to get you guys out of our system. We cannot go down that road for another 5 years. No. We're not going to make it anyway. We almost are growing already. The thing is crumbling in front of our own bare eyes. So we move on to the Lacalome update. In an update on Lacalome, in a letter to the residents of the housing authority, from the Housing Authority of Grenada, HAG, they invited the residents to a meeting held on Friday, the 20th June 2025, to provide crucial updates and address several issues affecting them. At the meeting, Mr. Williams, who hosted and chaired the meeting, apologized to the residents for the way things was handled. As usual, he admitted that they closed the stable after the horse went galloping down the road, and that's just me putting in this here, right? He said they should have gone to the residents first, hear their concerns, and then move on from there, move forward. According to Mr. Williams, there was a misunderstanding with regards to the payment for the lands, which there was no misunderstanding. It was clear what they said in the letter. I read the letter to you here on Simon Says. Residents were told initially that there was no payment plan, like what, just as they did with the Chinese housing, that they go to their financial institutions, they get the money, take a loan, get the monies, and pay the lump sum to the authority, right? And that's what was said. Anyhow, they're changing mode now. So they're saying that there's a payment plan in place right now. Persons just have to follow the process. The process is that one shows interest in the purchasing of the land, and by doing that, you then sign the form, the same infamous form that was handed to the resident when they thought they were getting the deed. And if you look on the screen, you see the photo of the Prime Minister handing over what everybody thought was a deed, but was the letter to sign. Yes, the Prime Minister involved in tricking his own. He's not just the Prime Minister there, he's the MP for the people of St. David's. He's a representative, right? So the deadline initially to sign the form was the 31st of May. But of course, you know, most of the residents refused to sign. And I do hope they continue to refuse to sign, because this is a trick. It is another trick. So they're saying now that it is extended in perpetuity, really. No deadline. Once you sign up to pay the authority, it's up to you. I guess and you work out your payment plan, you can just pay, right? Then they would survey the land after you sign up and so, and you come to an agreement. They would survey the land, right? And so that they can get the amount that each person, each individual have to pay to them, to the authority. They're saying that the lands actually belong to the housing authority, to HAG. The land will be sold to them at $3.50 a square foot at a 25% value, right? And they were also notified that the housing, the agreement they signed for the houses, that was with the Ministry of Housing. But the lands belong to the housing authority, and that's why they now have to pay the housing authority for the land. So it was explained to them that the lands the houses sitting on, the houses belong to the housing authority, and the lands belong to, the houses belong to the Ministry of Housing, I'm sorry, and the lands belong to the housing authority. So they know, and they said their hands are tied, there's nothing they can do about it. So they now have to pay the housing authority for the lands. The question is, When did the housing authority purchase the lands? How come it's only now they are claiming ownership of the lands? We need to know when they purchased the land. 15 years ago? 2 months ago? When did they purchase? How they came? How the land became the properties of the housing authority? As such, in the deeds for lands registry was made. You know what Simon says, we leave no stone unturned, right? Thoroughly made. Nothing found. Nothing came up for Lacret under the search, the housing authority, Grenada. Nothing. Again, we ask. We need to see the proof. Because you can't have these people paid for land that doesn't belong to you. Pay you for land that doesn't belong to you. And when did you get the land? Was it just transferred to you so you can collect money from these ordinary poor people? You are trying every scheme in the book to squeeze monies out of these people. Something is not adding up here. And whilst this is going on, you have people purchasing plantations and properties throughout Grenada, nation builders. We have people collecting thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars for skill training schools, traveling on monies belonging to the National Lottery Authority. 18,000 per person for a one-day meeting in France. Huh? And spending 2 weeks for a one-day meeting. $36,000. 50,000 traveling to the US. Nation builders collecting monies. We have millions given to a known egg sucker. You know, when you suck an egg, what your parents say when a dog sucking egg is sucking egg? Millions. You hear, you already use 40 million. You spend 200 million. It's just monies. And you squeezing these ordinary people who paid off for their homes and expect to get a deed in the hand, and you're telling them now to get it, they have to pay some of them another $6,000, $10,000, up to $15,000. You guys must go take a look at the houses in Lacret. They're shells. The people can't even afford to renovate their homes, most of them. And you want to ask them to pay you monies for lands that you claim belong to you that we can't find. We cannot find. Yeah? It's sickening. And you guys talk about putting people first. Which people? You and your people, we know that. We already see that. But the ordinary man who needs the attention, all you're trying to do is sap them for the very little they have. Disgusting. We come to St. David's. The corruption we hear of and witness throughout the constituencies and amongst the MPs and the contractors of the National Democratic Congress did not skip St. David's. In fact, I believe St. David's is the worst. I've heard of this. I mean, I've been hearing. We've been hearing. I spoke a little bit of it already. I spoke about the mighty Sky, who is the first cousin of the Prime Minister, who's getting all the contracts that he can handle And then, of course, when there's a spillover, I believe it's his brother-in-law, Sky's brother-in-law, that picks up the overflows. St. David, South, Carriacou, first, second, and third, in that order, respectively, when it comes to corruption. Now, in St. David's, there is a Dunbar and a Sky, well, we know who Sky is, together with the MP, Deacon Mitchell, who runs the constituency. Now, Sky, as I said before, is the first cousin of the Prime Minister, Honorable Deacon Mitchell, and Dunbar, a man who has been around the NDC for quite some time now. I know Dunbar. I know of Dunbar. I know Dunbar. Yes. But at one point, he was removed. He was far removed as a result of fraudulent behavior. Ask Adrian Persuader Thomas. He has the story. He knows the story well. But with the coming of Deacon Mitchell, he's been back, and back with a vengeance, it seems. Unfortunately, he's in a position to do so. He has the heirs of the Prime Minister, boastfully so. He boasts all around. He's the heirs of the Prime Minister. He said the Prime Minister is bringing back a cell phone every time he travels. Well, by now, I guess he could open a cell phone shop. Mr. James stated he never had issues with his job performance before within the Ministry of Infrastructure. Weeks ago, I asked the question here on Simon Says. The reason why Mr. Rundle James, the road officer from the Ministry of Infrastructure at the time, stationed in St. David, a job he held for 18 years, a contract worker, of course, why he was dismissed with immediate effect. Now, since the coming of Dunbar, Mr. James's job was threatened. Dunbar always threatened to report me, he said, to the Prime Minister for not going along with corrupt practices on court. Mr. James stated he never had issues with his job performance before within his ministry. He complained to the CTO, but he learned that from a co-worker that the CTO commented that they were trying to get rid of him. The dismissal letter was signed by the permanent secretary, Mr. Alva Brown. No stamp present, but it was handed to him by the CTO, Mr. Kevin Blash. He said the letter stated that they were restructuring. The Ministry of Infrastructure, they probably do need restructuring. So invoices had been brought to Mr. James as a road officer in the Ministry of Infrastructure, endless, most of which he refused to sign. And so he was deemed a troublemaker. He was deemed an NNP supporter and was reported to the Prime Minister on several occasions. He was called in by the Prime Minister in person on a couple of times as well, and several times by telephone, and disrespected, his words, by the Prime Minister. So let's go in depth. Dunbar had a tree cut. The tree was on a slope. He had the tree cut down without notifying the Ministry of Infrastructure, the police, and no one that is normally a part of the structure for such, if you have to cut down a tree because you know sometimes the tree fall in a different direction than you expected it to, can damage property, can even kill someone, right? There was no security, and it was just a total hazard. Dunbar sent someone to grade a pasture, a plain field. I'm just repeating pasture, exactly what Mr. James told me. A project that should have been done under the Ministry of Sports without communicating with the road officer. The gentleman showed up with a $4,000 invoice. Dunbar had no authority to do such, but Dunbar is in charge. A Miss Gray, a regular citizen, called Mr. James, ordering him to deliver asphalt to her to do a private job, build a road for her, asphalt. A guy showed up with a $5,000 invoice to cut. He said he had cut up a tree. No evidence of the tree, no photos, nothing to show. Mr. James refused to sign the invoice. Of course, he refused to send the asphalt and refused to sign the previous one, the 4,001 for the field. Mr. James refused to sign that invoice for the cutting up of the tree. That was since 2023, and up to the time of his dismissal, he had nothing again of the tree or the monies owing for the cutting up of the tree. Mr. James was called to Syracuse. When he got there, he met Dunbar and Sky there with the area with a machine man. And Mr. James, was told that the Prime Minister said he wanted a road cut. So they went ahead and called the machine man. Now this is what Mr. James, the road officer from the Ministry of Infrastructure, is supposed to be doing. Now they got the orders from the Prime Minister. He wanted the road cut. They called the machine man, the three of them there, and they called Mr. James, as a matter of fact, just for so. They don't really need him, but because you see, he have to sign the invoice. Now they cannot sign invoices to go into the Ministry of Infrastructure. I wonder where, I hope Mr. Rodney George and Mr. William Joseph listening to this, right? All the structures and the procedures that's there, they're forgetting that this is the administration that changed structure on their arrival so that persons can collect up to $100,000 without any structure. They're forgetting that. The procurement law, they changed it from 15,000 to 100,000. Anybody could get that. Anybody could give anybody $100,000 without no receipt. You don't have to show for that. They're forgetting that. These two big old men. Now, so he went to see, when he reached, and they explained to him about the cutting of the road. And there's no policeman, he said. No permanent secretary authorization. So Mr. James said he wanted no part of that. And so he left. Now, while he was leaving, the machine man started calling him, because the machine man knows that if Mr. James left, he ain't getting no invoice signed. So he ain't doing no work. The machine man also left. At one point, the Prime Minister called him in to ask him why he's not signing the invoices. Now, this is a gentleman who is going by the books, protecting the government and himself from corruption. And he is being called in by the Prime Minister and Minister of Infrastructure, asking why he's not signing fraudulent invoices in some cases, ghost invoices. Mr. James believes he was fired because he was not into corruption. And this is a quote here, because he was not into corruption. Mr. James was called one morning by the Prime Minister. He was ordered by the Prime Minister to have some materials removed from the side of the road, which was from and owned by a contractor who was doing a job. The job slowed down and stopped a couple of months, and the material was by the road, sitting there for a couple of months. More than likely, according to Mr. James, residents might have complained. And so the Prime Minister called him and asked him to get the materials removed. Mr. James called the contractor who owned the material and asked him to remove the material immediately. And the contractor communicated that he will have it done the said day. The project was stopped for whatever reason. Like most of the projects, they've started, big voos, and then they stop until somebody complain, villagers complain, a blogger or a podcaster complain, and then you see them scrambling again. By about midday, the Prime Minister called back Mr. James and asked him to deliver the material to another contractor. He explained to the Prime Minister that he had asked the owner of the material to remove it, and he's thinking by now the gentleman might have already done so. The PM said to Mr. James, "I gave you an instruction, just do it." And he hung up the phone on the gentleman. The contractor had picked up the material, his material, and Mr. James was called into a meeting at the complex and chastised, of course. Mr. James said to me, according to procedures, illegal and unlawful instructions can be refused. He explained to the Prime Minister why he can't sign some of those invoices. He was said to be holding up the process, just as we are, the ones of us who are exposing them. Right? That's what the Prime Minister said. He liked that word, huh? Mr. James said to me he was working as road officer in St. David's for 2 years before the coming of the NDC in 2022. He told the Prime Minister, in the presence of the Permanent Secretary and the CTO, that he cannot sign something he knows nothing about. He was called to Black Sage Alley to cut a private road through a cemetery, called by one Abigail Ellis on behalf of the Prime Minister. When he got there and realized what it was, he turned it down, advising the young lady to try MIT. He was called by a worker from the parliamentary office in St. David. The worker, Daniel, said they have to do some drains and walls in Malti in front of a property. He went. It was by the main road, so he figured it was something the Ministry of Infrastructure would do. So he went to have a look. Before he got back to his office, he got a call, someone from the village saying to him, "So all you go in and build wall and road, 2 driveway for Daniel's mother." He didn't realize the property was belonging to the mother of the young lady, the Daniel that called him. Said to him, it was under the Prime Minister's order. The Prime Minister ordered it. He refused to sign off on that project as well, and also referred her to MIT. Anything crooked, go to MIT. The Prime Minister sent a photo of a road to him, accusing him of doing a private road using asphalt. it was an allowed road, the canal road. He was called into a meeting with the PS and the CTO, Mr. Blash, because the PM was upset on the matter. He had to explain to the CTO that it was an allowed road and that you, the CTO, you know of the road. He then went, oh, yes. The PS told him then that he understood that he was a troublemaker. So they did a road through the Ministry of Infrastructure. For some reason, somebody must be telltale to the PM that the road was done. It's an allowed road, an open government road. And he was called in on it because it was done in asphalt. He was also accused by the Prime Minister of doing a road because NNP Jack lived there. All of you in St. David's going to know who NNP Jack is. I don't know who NNP Jack is. An allowed road, right? They claimed that he used hot mix on the allowed road. That road, even though it was an allowed road, was done with binding. It was done with binding. And so what if NNP Jack live in that area? NNP Jack don't pay taxes? When NNP Jack goes to the corner store or the supermarket, when he pays his bills, he pays taxes. NNP Jack ain't supposed to drive on his way home to Smooth Road, on Smooth Road. The Prime Minister asked him for a scope of work. One day called him, asked him for whatever the scope of work was, while he was in the field in Wester Hall. When he got back to the office, there was no internet. The Prime Minister called bullying him and hung up on him. He didn't even have time to tell the Prime Minister that there's no internet. There's something wrong, there's no internet. He had to leave the office, hurry home, to his home, to go prepare the scope of work for the Prime Minister. He bullies, he speaks rudely, and then just hung up his phone. There were those who tried to corrupt him, he said. One contractor offered him $2,000, because the contractors getting extra, because they have to wait for whichever one of the ministers come to them for money. It's a John Gotti style we run in, mafia style, right? He offered him $2,000. He said, you worked along with me well. He said, no, thank you. Another one told him, you could write invoice to yourself, You could take a $10,000. He said, no, thank you. Mr. James is convinced he was fired because he refused to be corrupt. And after 18 years, he was fired with no compensation. He had just purchased one of the Chinese donated condos for $75,000 and had a car note. He wrote to the PS, Mr. Albert Brown, asking for clarification on his dismissal, to no avail. Folks, corruption is the new norm with this NDC administration. Today we have the Minister of Finance revealing in real time that what I have been saying about the movements of monies through the Ministry of MIT is indeed true. I mean, I knew it was true, and I know you know it was true, right? Without mentioning any name, Dennis Cornwall, Minister of Finance and Member of Parliament for St. Patrick East, pelt Andy Williams under the bus. Him and his Ministry of MIT. But what Minister Cornwall didn't realize, and I'll tell you why a little later on, Andy held on to his blazer and he went under the bus too with Andy. All, two of them and the ministries went under the bus. Let's hear what Cornwall had to say.
Constituency, St. Patrick's East. How is things in the constituency, sir?
Well, a lot is happening in St. Patrick East, and in recent time I've done some interviews on how many houses that we have actually put out in the last year since burial.
Yeah.
And I must say that things have gone apace. A number of persons would have gotten a new house. In some cases, the house repairs and so on. There are one or two houses that were started and they are yet to be completed. Some of them have issues, I would tell you, because I've heard one or two cases yesterday when I was in the field that the contractor started the house and he disappeared.
Why is that happening, sir?
I don't really know, but I mean, I believe that the persons who issuing the contracts to those contractors need to basically make sure that they vet these people properly and so on. I've heard stories on the road, which I mean, I don't even want to talk about it here right now, where a guy got money and so on, he put it in an account and so on, and every now and again he goes and takes $200 from it and so on. And it doesn't appear on the person's side to be able to continue the project. So yes, we have one or two houses.
So we have a management problem there to that.
Yes, there might be that case this one. But I want to put out a warning out to the persons who have collected government monies and did not do what they should do with it and so on, or use it for other purposes and so on. We would have the audit department audit those things, and would have the necessary step taken to make sure that you can account for the monies that you were given. I know there are problems where, for example, somebody might tell you, well, this is the land and so on, and when I say we, the ministry took it as a gospel, and they went and started building that house, and then realized that there was somebody coming and challenge you building on my land. Again, we have to be more structured, put things in place to make sure that we can verify ownership of property before we get into building those things. So yes, there might be some learning situation in the past that we have to take into consideration, where people build on people's land that was not authorized. And so we, going forward, have to make sure that all of these things are corrected. It may not be just a matter of mismanagement. It may be a matter of people not being upfront with the information they gave the minister.
What is interesting about Minister Cornwall's comment? He is the Minister of Finance. He is the God of the financial rules. Why would you pay someone full amount of monies before they even scratch a nail? He is the man in charge and of all finances. All finances should come from him in the ministry. To solidify this, here's what Minister Cornwall had to say in that same interview on corruption when asked about payments to service providers. Here's his response.
Minister of Finance is always traditionally, of course, responsible for payments. There's a conversation that I've been hearing. I just want to get... I'm asking you these questions for clarification purposes. Responsible for payments, as I mentioned, the Minister of Finance. Can another minister collect checks and distribute them for service providers? Can that actually happen?
The Ministry of Finance has specific functions.
Yeah.
I could outline some of them. We prepare the budget. We collect revenues via our Customs and Excise Department as well as the Inland Revenue Department.
Yeah.
Right? And all of this money is deposited in our bank accounts. A general one called the Consolidated Fund. And that's where, for example, all the monies that government collect, whether it is tax or non-tax revenue goes. Yeah. And from there, we basically allocate and distribute that monies. The Ministry of Finance also is ultimately responsible for making payments to suppliers, individuals, public servants, and other entities and so on. But to do so, we rely on a number of elements coming in, the ministries, the departments, and so on, making sure that they send the information into the system, which is monitored by the Accountant General Department and the Treasury. So, for example, if a Ministry of Work has a project and a claim surface from them, it comes to the Ministry of Finance. And from the Ministry of Finance and somebody's checking it and realize, okay, there is a problem with the number that they ask us to pay. Maybe it was same number.
Yeah.
We have to query that because we are the last stop before things go out and done. So it's not a simple saying that the Ministry of Finance, is the one responsible for paying. We pay, but it must be on authentic information in the system.
Yeah.
If there's problem with information in the system, we have to push back. And sometimes again, I've had cases and so on where people say, oh, it's down in the Ministry of Finance and so on, and they're not paying it and so on. When you do your investigation, that thing have not even left the Ministry Department as yet. Or the person doing it and so on did not complete the assignment and so on. So how can I pay if I haven't received something? So yes, there are issues or instances like that. And we have to work very hard in terms of maintaining the integrity of the system at all time. We try to at all time. But again, it doesn't depend on that department called or that ministry called the Ministry of Finance to do everything. We have to do our check and balances. We have to make sure everything is right before we print a check. So I'm saying that if garbage coming out there and so on, and we accept the garbage in the Ministry of Finance, you remember the phrase, "Kaigo, garbage in, garbage out"?
Yes.
That would happen and so on. But I say Ministry of Finance is the medium by which we basically interact with the information that comes in and pay based on whether or not that information is authentic.
All right. So no other ministry could, of course, have the authority to do that?
No.
Okay.
In fact, I cannot instruct the Accountant General or anybody in any of my departments to do something that is illegal. I cannot instruct them.
All right.
I can explain that better than Mr. Cornwell. Straight up. One of the two adults in the cabinet, when they speak, I'll place Sister G later, the only two adults in the cabinet of Grenada, right? And you heard him. So what Minister Cornwell just said there is that the transactions taking place in the Ministry of MIT are illegal. It's corruption. He's just telling us that. So we await the investigation, right, of that ministry. According to what the minister said, contractors cashing in and not doing the work. Where are they getting the money to cash in? Certainly not from the Ministry of Finance, according to their procedures and according to what the minister explained. And if it is from the Ministry of Finance, it means that it's illegal. It came from the Ministry of Finance illegally. In other words, if the Ministry of MIT or Infrastructure or Education, whichever ministry, sends over an invoice to the Ministry of Finance, a bogus invoice, and the Ministry of Finance sign off on it. So I have to get a contract for $50,000. And the ministry put it for $75,000. And the check comes for $75,000 and my name. So I have to go change the check and give back the balance. Right? So something is not right. There's a hanky-panky going on, right? And somehow the Ministry of Finance is involved. Because if you say, Minister, that the monies, finances are only being dealt with the Ministry of Finance or through the Ministry of Finance, where is the Ministry of MIT getting the monies? I keep asking that. Where are they getting the hundreds of thousands of dollars that they are giving out? Where are they getting it? Right? According to you, Minister, it should only come from the Ministry of Finance. Now, everyone knows or should know that no contractor receives or should receive all their monies up front for any job. Isn't the executing ministry, in this case, the Ministry of MIT, certifies that the contractor supposed to be paid, after which the accountant general issues a check to the individual. Now, if the individual, in some cases, if they have a bank account that the accountant general has the account number, they would deposit into the account. If not, they write a check to the individual, a government check to that individual, right? Now this based on, and I'm saying they receive their monies based on certification that the individual is eligible for payment on the execution of the job. So the job is done, all is well, they're eligible for payment. What is clear, sir, is that you have removed yourself, and I'm speaking to Minister Dennis Cornwall here, you have removed yourself from the contract preparation when you spoke about the contractors not doing their job and bad management, right? We all know that falls squarely in the lap of the minister and the ministry of MIT. But at the same time, where is the monies coming from that the MIT is squandering? You're going to do investigation, you say, and the people who collecting government monies and not doing the work would have to pay it back, I guess. MIT has their own money machine? I highly doubt. So the question is again, where is the monies that MIT is squandering about the place? Where are those monies coming from? According to the SR&O 33 of 2015, Public Finance Management Regulation Section 33 of the Public Finance Management Regulations, subsection A, B, and C. And I quote, A, in case of payment for construction, the supply of goods or the rendering of services, that the procurement complies with the Public Procurement and Disposal of Public Property Act 2014 and every regulation made thereunder. B, that the construction has been done, the goods supplied or the services rendered, as the case may be, and that the price change is according to the contract, or, if not, specified by the contractor, is reasonable. And C, where pursuant to the contract, a payment is to be made before the completion of the construction, the delivery of the goods, or the rendering of the services, as the case may be, that the payment is according to the contract. It can't get any clearer than this. So now the question is, Minister Cornwall, what is going to be done with the information that the service for providers are being paid cash at the Ministry of MIT? The check, they are given checks in their names. They go to the bank, they change the checks, they bring back the cash to the ministry. And then when they're to be paid, they get paid cash. Sometimes they are allowed, depending on the amount, to take their monies. If it's 5,000, 10,000 up front, then bring the rest back to the ministry. How is this allowed? What is going to be done with the information that the service providers are being paid cash by the permanent secretary in the Ministry of MIT, Ms. Nicole Clark, who is the first cousin of the minister, Andy Williams? Does MIT have their own consolidated fund? But we are not surprised of the complaint coming from Minister Cornwall. The Minister for MIT, Andy Williams, was proud to tell us that he scraped guys off the block in the limes and in the valley. And in a matter of weeks, he had a contractor building house and roads. Here we go.
I went, for example, in the Limes, got guys to come. We had a meeting on the Limes basketball court and got guys off the block to come and start to paint, plumbing, electrical, even in Grenada Valley. Yeah, we have guys like John Del Fletcher, who came in as a young person and just learning some of the stuff in construction. Now he's building houses, he's doing roads.
And then to confirm the results of the block's contractors, here's Tanti Glow on the NDC Heartbeat program.
That came out clearly after the burial response.
Yeah.
We were looking for contractors to do small houses, and we were not getting contractors.
Yeah, exactly.
So then we hire people, they said they could build, and when you see what they build, it's a disaster, next disaster. So we really need to get our people, especially our young men, upgraded with skills.
Yes.
Yeah. Because some of them, they've been around construction as a helper, but they have not acquired the skill to go on their own.
Right.
So we are hiring people because they say they could do the work. No vetting, no, where's your certification, nothing. So you hire them, sometimes they say they could do the work, we hire them, they do the work, and when you see what they do, one big cabal of corrupt individuals fighting for their cause and theirs only. Forget the putting people first. That's a rhetoric. It's all about them and their circle and themselves quickly because they know they ain't going back. So it's a race for who could carry the bigger bag of money. It has absolutely nothing to do with us, with the people of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique. What should be, under normal circumstances, breaking news was in fact confirming news. You see, former Senator Jonathan Lacret and the then Minister of Youth and Sports, since being fired by the Prime Minister Deacon Mitchell on the 31st of July 2024, has finally broke his silence, confirming all that was said here on Simon Says. Of course, Simon Says gave you more information and more details. Lacret was a guest on the Sunday talk show, The Bub Report, last Sunday, the 22nd June 2025. I did share with you a couple episodes ago that Mr. Lacret has moved on and is now leader of his political party, the People's National Party, PNP. On Sunday, in that interview with the host of the Bub Report, Dr. Kellen Bub, Lacret put on his boxing gloves. With no holds barred, he confirmed to Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique, and the diaspora, the rest of the world, what we know to be the truth. Of course, I'll share with you clips of the talk show with you, and I'll begin with the infamous morning, the morning of the 31st of July, 2025, when the senator/minister was relieved of his duties.
Now, in that press conference, when the Prime Minister announced your dismissal, he articulated that he lost confidence in you. But you're saying now that the Prime Minister did not give you a specific set of justifications as to why he lost confidence in you. But I'm sure there were conversations leading up to that moment perhaps that you can speak to?
Not that I remember at all. In fact, I walked into the cabinet on the 31st of July, 2024. And if my memory serves me correctly, cabinet started at 10 o'clock that morning. And the Prime Minister, as per usual, walked out of his office and greeted the cabinet of ministers. And we reciprocated with a good morning and sat. And he informed that the cabinet meeting this morning is about Minister Lacret, and that as of 8 o'clock, the very said morning, he instructed the Governor General to revoke both my senatorial and ministerial appointments, and that I may now leave the cabinet. Before he began his discourse, he did mention that it was with a heavy heart that he had to make that announcement this morning before my cabinet colleagues and also members of the National Executive Council of the party that were present online.
Or virtually?
Virtually. Yes, I picked up my laptop. I placed it inside my bag while I was thanking him for the opportunity to serve in the cabinet of Grenada and also in the Parliament of Grenada. And I also thanked my former colleagues for the opportunity to be able to serve with them, that it was a wonderful 2-year journey that I will not trade for anything, serving at the policy level of the nation. And I wished the administration as well as the political organization well, and I exited the cabinet with a smile on my face.
Okay. Were you escorted by security forces at the ministerial cabinet? Size of the ministerial cabinet?
Security officers.
Security officers. Security, I said security places.
You're making it sound like a drug raid, you know that. Security officers. Yes, when I exited the cabinet, in fact, before I exited the cabinet and my hand touched the doorknob of the cabinet, I remember the Honorable Prime Minister saying, Mr. Lacret, I recognize that there is some confusion on your face as to why I did.
As I was leaving.
That was as I was leaving. I recognize that there is some confusion on your face as to why I did what I did this morning. If you would like an explanation, you can set an appointment with my administrative assistant, executive secretary, and that's Ms. Leslie, and we can meet after the cabinet today if you are available. I said to him, thank you very much, Prime Minister, for the accommodation. And when I exited the cabinet, I recognized that 2 officers were sitting outside of the cabinet. Actually, they were sitting on the couch. I greeted them, and while I walked out of the second door and headed towards the elevator, I recognized that the elevator went down to the first floor, and I decided I was not going to wait. So while standing in front of the elevator, they came on either side of me, one on the left, one on the right, and I motioned to them to ask them if everything is okay. And they said, oh, yes, 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 Minister, all is well. We were just instructed to escort you. Well, yes, we were just instructed to escort you down to your office. And I said, okay, no problem. And they escorted me down to the 3rd floor. I went into my office. I was not allowed to touch anything that was government owned. I was only allowed to take that which belonged to me, which I did. I was asked to hand over the government phone immediately, and I motioned to the National Security Advisor that I have some contacts on the phone that I would like to transfer. If I'm exiting office, I would like to keep these contacts because they're important. He gave me the opportunity to do so, and took back the phone. I exited, and they escorted me down to the 1st floor. And Officer Cohen took me to my vehicle and ensured that I left the compound driving off. I did message the Prime Minister when I got into my vehicle after I drove off to request a time that is best suited for him so that we can have the meeting the afternoon once he's available, because I was expressing my availability at the time. But between the time, because cabinet started at 10, so between 10:15 and around 2:30, I recognized that the Prime Minister's office had put out a release that they were going to have a press conference on Thursday, the 1st of July, the day after the firing. And part of the dialogue of that press conference was to inform the nation as to why I had to exit the cabinet of Grenada. And I felt that if you're going to explain to the nation why and not give me an explanation, it's sort of like putting the cart before the horse. So Prime Minister called just around the 3:30 minutes to 4 time frame, because we had set up a time, and he messaged me via WhatsApp. And I said to him, Prime Minister, I recognize that there is a press conference that is due for tomorrow. And part of the press conference is to speak about or to inform the nation as it relates to why I had to exit the cabinet of Grenada, or you had to fire me. And I said to him, I'd rather wait for the conclusion of the press conference. Yes, I believe it was my right to do so at that particular point in time. And then he said to me, no, he really wants to be able to speak before the press conference. And I said, respectfully, Prime Minister, I'd rather wait for the conclusion of the press conference, because I would like to hear why it is you did what you did.
Well, go ahead. Now, you've heard several things in that clip. One, the manner in which he was fired in front of his cabinet colleagues and the NDC National Executive Council. Again, where is the line? That line that separates party from government. As I understand it, the NDC National Executive Council attends cabinet meetings every first Monday in the month. They too get a meeting on a need-to-know basis. However, Minister Lacret was fired at a special sitting on Wednesday, the 31st July 2024. Hence the reason the deputy chairman of the party can put out in his post after Jonathan Lacret's interview on the Bob Report on Sunday, the 22nd June 2025. His post reads, "Thankfully, I was present to see the back and forth between the then Senator Lacret and Prime Minister. And frankly, Prime Minister demonstrated more patience than Job. Jonathan Lacret is not what he is making out himself to be." All of a sudden, when they were playing, throwing thing up and live vests, and he was fine. Caveat emptor in full. A word to the wise is sufficient. Deacon Mitchell never rushes to judgment, and he is very wise. Okay, we know he's very wise. The question to the deputy chairman of the NDC, Mr. Randall Robinson, is, and it's not coming from me, the question is, which cabinet meeting is he speaking about? Which cabinet meeting was the back and forth, or did the back and forth take place? Now, according to Mr. Lacret, that meeting, and you heard him say it at that cabinet meeting, when he was told that he was fired and asked to leave the cabinet, he got up, packed his computer, put his computer in his bag, thanked the Prime Minister for having him served, and thanked his cabinet colleagues as well, wishing them best of luck, and left the cabinet with a smile on his face. Here, Mr. Lacret went on to say further what happened on that morning.
Now, in that press conference, when the Prime Minister announced your dismissal, he articulated that he lost confidence in you. But you're saying now that the Prime Minister did not give you a specific set of justifications as to why he lost confidence in you. But I'm sure there were conversations leading up to that moment, perhaps that you can speak to.
Not that I remember at all. In fact, I walked into the cabinet on the 31st of July, 2024. And if my memory serves me correctly, cabinet started at 10 o'clock that morning. And the Prime Minister, as per usual, walked out of his office and greeted the Cabinet of Ministers. And we reciprocated with a good morning and sat. And he informed that the Cabinet meeting this morning is about Minister Lacret, and that as of 8 o'clock, the very said morning, he instructed the Governor General to revoke both my senatorial and ministerial appointments, and that I may now leave the Cabinet. Before he began his discourse, he did mention that it was with a heavy heart that he had to make that announcement this morning before my Cabinet colleagues and also members of the National Executive Council of the party that were present online. Virtually. Yes, I picked up my laptop. I placed it inside my bag while I was thanking him for the opportunity to serve in the Cabinet of Grenada and also in the Parliament of Grenada. And I also thanked my former colleagues for the opportunity to be able to serve with them, that it was a wonderful 2-year journey that I will not trade for anything, serving at the policy level of the nation. And I wished the administration as well as the political organization well, and I exited the Cabinet with a smile on my face.
Okay. Were you escorted by security forces at the ministerial cabinet? Size of the ministerial cabinet?
Security officers.
Security officers. Security, I said security places.
Yeah, you're making it sound like a drug raid, you know that. Security officers. Yes, when I exited the Cabinet, in fact, before I exited the Cabinet and my hand touched the doorknob of the Cabinet, I remember the Honorable Prime Minister saying, Mr. Lacret, I recognize that there is some confusion on your face as to why I did.
As it was leaving.
That was as I was leaving. I recognize that there is some confusion on your face as to why I did what I did this morning. If you would like an explanation, you can set an appointment with my administrative assistant, executive secretary, and that's Ms. Leslie, and we can meet after the Cabinet today if you are available. I said to him, thank you very much, Prime Minister, for the accommodation. And when I exited the Cabinet, I recognized that 2 officers were sitting outside of the Cabinet. Actually, they were sitting on the couch. I greeted them, and while I walked out of the second door and headed towards the elevator, I recognized that the elevator went down to the 1st floor, and I decided I was not going to wait. So while standing in front of the elevator, they came on either side of me, one on the left, one on the right, and I motioned to them to ask them if everything is okay. And they said, oh, yes, Minister, all is well. We were just instructed to escort you. Well, yes, we were just instructed to escort you down to your office. And I said, okay, no problem. And they escorted me down to the 3rd floor. I went into my office. I was not allowed to touch anything that was government owned. I was only allowed to take that which belonged to me, which I did. I was asked to hand over the government phone immediately, and I motioned to the National Security Advisor that I have some contacts on the phone that I would like to transfer. If I'm exiting office, I would like to keep these contacts because they're important. He gave me the opportunity to do so, and took back the phone. I exited, and they escorted me down to the 1st floor. And Officer Cohen took me to my vehicle and ensured that I left the compound driving off. I did message the Prime Minister when I got into my vehicle after I drove off to request a time that is best suited for him so that we can have the meeting the afternoon once he's available, because I was expressing my availability at the time. But between the time, because Cabinet started at 10, so between 10:15 and around 2:30, I recognized that the Prime Minister's office had put out a release that they were going to have a press conference on Thursday, the 1st of July, the day after the firing. And part of the dialogue of that press conference was to inform the nation as to why I had to exit the Cabinet of Grenada. And I felt that if you're going to explain to the nation why and not give me an explanation, it's sort of like putting the cart before the horse. So Prime Minister called just around the 3:30 Minister for time frame, because we had set up a time, and he messaged He messaged me via WhatsApp. And I said to him, Prime Minister, I recognize that there is a press conference that is due for tomorrow. And part of the press conference is to speak about or to inform the nation as it relates to why I had to exit the cabinet of Grenada, or you had to fire me. And I said to him, I rather wait for the conclusion of the press conference. Yes, I believe it was my right to do so at that particular point in time. And then he said to me, no, he really wants to be able to speak before the press conference. And I said, respectfully, Prime Minister, I rather wait for the conclusion of the press conference, because I would like to hear why it is you did what you did.
So we hear a former Senator Jonathan Lacret there in backing up what he said, that it was cordial. He was given his marching orders. He got up, he put his computer in his bag. He said his goodbyes, thanking who he had to thank, wishing well, and he left with a smile on his face. Here's what the Prime Minister had to say on the 1st of August in a press conference to tell the nation that he had fired Jonathan Lacret the day before.
The second issue I want to address is to inform the public that yesterday I advised the Governor General, Her Excellency Dame Cecilia Grenada, to recall the appointment of Minister Jonathan Lacret as the Minister for Youth and Sport, and also to recall his appointment as Senator as a result thereof, since his senatorial appointment was in effect to allow him to carry out his duties as a minister. I have since communicated that decision to Mr. Lacret yesterday morning and thanked him for his service to the government and people of Grenada as a Minister of Government and as a Senator. He has expressed his appreciation for being given the opportunity to serve in the Cabinet of Ministers. The reason for doing so is that as Prime Minister, sitting in the Cabinet, I formed the view that I had personally lost trust and confidence in Minister Lacret in his capacity as a minister, and in those circumstances I thought it was appropriate for me to inform him of that fact and to inform his fellow cabinet colleagues. I want to emphasize that there is no personal issues between myself and Mr. Lacret. I am quite fond of him. There are no personal issues between him and the ministers of government. They have an excellent relationship. This is purely an issue of my prime ministerial discretion in relation to Minister Lacret as a minister in cabinet, and in circumstances where as Prime Minister I no longer hold confidence in any particular minister, the only appropriate thing to do would be to allow the minister to be relieved of the burden of ministerial duties, and I have so done. I appreciate that the journalists who are here and other members of the media may have questions as to why I formed that view. I will indicate that I will not get into the nitty-gritty of the details because they are not appropriate given the fact that it's a trust and confidence issue, but I'm happy to entertain any questions that you may have nonetheless in light of that. For completion, I should indicate that Senator the Honorable David Andrew will act as Minister for Youth and Sport in the meantime until I make a further decision as to the substantive post of Minister for Youth and Sports or any further cabinet realignment that may arise thereof.
So now, Mr. Robinson, were you referring to that cabinet meeting when Mr. Lacret was fired, or to the cabinet meeting where the then Minister Lacret was chastised in front of cabinet members and the National Executive Council in the case of the athletic stadium? Just in case you have memory loss, let me walk you back to the cabinet meeting in question. That was a cabinet meeting where the decision surrounding who gave permission to a promoter to use the athletic stadium and why. After millions was spent a few weeks earlier to put on a new track to host the Carifta Games 2024. That cabinet meeting, yes, and I spoke to Mr. Lacret, agreed that they were back and forth at that meeting. Because after I saw your post, I had to call him. I needed to confirm, because he said one thing, the Prime Minister said one thing, you saying another thing, Mr. Randall Robinson, right? The morning, the Prime Minister read out a correspondence that took place between Minister Lacret and the #1 accredited journalist in Grenada, which she shared with the Prime Minister. She and Minister Lacret had the, and she shared what Minister Lacret said to her with the Prime Minister. The minister acknowledged that he did share that information with the #1 journalist. The Prime Minister was very upset, basically, that the minister admitted he knew nothing about the transaction between Mr. Duncan, the promoter, and the stadium authorities, and the fact that there was none. So in other words, there was no agreement between the stadium authority and the stadium board, the board of directors, and the promoter. And he said, and he, as the Minister of Sports, knew nothing of it as well. The agreement was made between the Prime Minister and the promoter. And no one else was involved. No one else was informed. Right? So when the promoter started promoting his event, that's when everybody started to, well, who gave him permission to use the stadium? Right? Usually, the management and staff take care of most of the bookings for the stadium, except for the use of the athletic stadium. A request for the athletic stadium goes to the board of directors because there are additional restrictions, of course, for the tracks, to secure the tracks. In that case, as I understand it, the board had turned down the application to the promoter, and the promoter just went straight to the Prime Minister, just like it did to all other promoters. So there were other promoters seeking to use the athletic stadium because we know the cricket stadium was on renovations. And they were turned down. Two of the most popular other promoters were turned down. And that promoter, being #3, went straight to the Prime Minister. And the Prime Minister, without informing the board of directors of the stadium, the minister and ministry, the permanent secretary, he went on and gave permission, right? The permanent secretary, nor the stadium authorities, nobody knew of that arrangement between the Prime Minister and the promoter, right? The then minister questioned the decision. It was revealed that it was the Prime Minister who gave the okay. The back and forth in the cabinet that Mr. Robinson is speaking of, it was that day because Minister Lacret, as I understand it, and not from him, but from someone who witnessed it, said he held his own, he stood his ground, and respectively so, their exact words. Also from that clip, you heard the former minister explain how he was escorted out of the ministerial complex. I remember bringing that to you, and it was also spoken of by workers who witnessed the showdown. When asked about that at the press conference to the nation, This is what the Prime Minister had to say.
Good morning to the Honorable Prime Minister and the other members of the head table and the listening public. There are reports that Mr. Lacret was escorted out of the complex by security forces. Can you confirm and explain, if so, can you explain the need or the rationale behind that move?
Well, I have no knowledge of that, so I can't confirm or deny, and I'd be surprised that that can even take place. As I indicated earlier, let me repeat. I would have communicated to Minister Lacret my decision in the presence of cabinet colleagues in the cabinet room. Minister Lacret would have obviously then excused himself from the cabinet room. I remained in the cabinet room, so to my colleagues, so I'm not in a position to speak to anything that would have happened outside of that. I subsequently communicated with Minister Lacret by messages. Subsequently, he did not raise with me any of those issues, and well, I can't presume, but I would have thought that if something like that happened, that it would have been raised. So I'm not aware of that.
The question is, who gave the orders to escort Senator Lacret from the cabinet room? And from the cabinet room to the ministry, followed him to his ministry, and then to his vehicle, and made sure he left the compound. Who called in, what he was then, I'm not sure, he's now ACP Cowan? Yeah, ACP Cowan, and Mr. William Thompson, who is the head of securities for the government of Grenada. They were the two waiting outside the cabinet doors for Mr. Lacret. Who gave the orders, right? Because the Prime Minister said the only person he spoke to before he spoke to the cabinet, addressed Mr. Lacret at the cabinet meeting, was the Governor General, right? He had her to cancel Mr. Lacret's appointments of being a senator and a minister, right? Now, he's the only person that knew Mr. Lacret would need escorting, or so he thought. Maybe because of what happened at the other meeting, where Mr. Lacret held his ground, he figured Mr. Lacret was going to put up probably a fight or argue on that day. So he had his forces ready and waiting for Mr. Lacret. But it happened so quietly. But they were there, and they still escorted him because they had to escort him, as Mr. Lacret said, you heard him say, to his office, so that he only took his things to make sure that he took his possessions and not anything belonging to the government of Grenada, right? A blatant lie by the Prime Minister to say he knew nothing of that. That is a blatant lie. Embarrassed because there was just no need for the excessive force. Just no need. Jonathan Lacret spoke of the inhumane behavior of how the Prime Minister treated him.
Kellon, you must have known that coming to the nation and using these two unmeasurable terms, trust and confidence, was going to affect my employability thereafter, that it was going to affect my family thereafter, that it was going to affect practically everything that I've built over the years as somebody who worked in the public service, worked in the private sector, and also led a ministry, spiritual ministry, for the greater part of 9 years, that the person's character, integrity, values will be called into question. And in retrospect, sometimes you sit down and you look back and you wonder, was the objective political calculus? Was it internal party maneuvering? What was it? Because a minister was relieved of his duties way before I was. He was afforded the opportunity of a sit-down, of a dialogue, a conversation, The Prime Minister, along with the Minister, came to the media and they spoke about his exit from cabinet and as to why he's exiting cabinet at this particular point in time, which is to further his studies. Why wasn't I afforded that opportunity, even if you felt that you came into information that one of your cabinet ministers is divulging data from the cabinet of Grenada or from government, and that the quality of that data has the ability to compromise the governance and leadership structure of the organization? Where is the conversation? Where was the dialogue to say, Jonathan, Lacret, Lackey, whatever you want to say, this is the information I've come into. I'm giving you an opportunity to defend or not to defend the information. And I'll close by saying this. Even in a court of law, the defendant, based on the advice of his lawyer, is given an opportunity to speak in his own defense. And I'm saying to myself, it came across as an execution-style exit at the particular point in time, because I felt, as somebody who is astute and intelligent, understand the terrain of law, etc., that you had 101 ways, Dr. Bob, 101 ways Sir could have dealt with that particular situation. Revoked my ministerial appointment and left me as a senator, and you could have placed me anywhere in the public sector to continue my service to the people of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique with the senatorial title and still working in the Senate of Grenada. You could have placed me on a board or two so that I do not lose the financial package that I was receiving at the time. You know that I have a mortgage. You know that I have vehicular payments at the end of the month and other financial facilities with financial organizations. And I sat for the past 11 months trying to decipher in my mind, because my wife was 5.5, 6 months pregnant at the time of my firing, and she had to be hospitalized because her pressure went to the roof. And I almost lost both of them. But the spiritual attack did not kill us. It did not wipe us out.
As I'm sure it had most of you, what could have gone so wrong? It seems like we'll never know. Mr. Lacret said he has no idea, although he was given the opportunity and he didn't take it because he said he was waiting on the interview. In my mind, he should have gone to the meeting the afternoon. Then he would have probably known, probably, I'm not sure. He probably would have been told why, and then he could have told us why, right? So he was never told, and the Prime Minister to date has refused to answer to the media or any other person when asked or to speak on why, what happened. At the press conference on the 1st of August, he did not speak. He did not say what took him to that place of no trust and no confidence in the minister/senator, right? Even being pressed on the day, here is what he said.
So I was asking, recognizing that you're bound to act in the interest of the people as the Prime Minister, to what extent it matters, which resulted in, you say, loss of confidence in Mr. Lacret is the reason why you have acted, taken the action that you have. To what extent did the loss of confidence in the former minister have to do with governance of the country and the interests of the people? Was he acting to the detriment of the interests of the people? And the other part is whether or not there was just one issue or several issues that led to this, and how long has this been brewing? What's the straw that broke the camel's back, really? And I know you said you didn't want to go into specifics, but help me out here, please.
Yes, well, I'm helping you out. Well, it was not an incident, so clearly confidence comes from a relationship. And we've had a 2-year relationship as minister and prime minister. So it would have been a culmination of the 2-year period and my own assessment over that period. And as it relates to the best interests of the people and the best interests of the government, yes, as part of the consideration, that would have been factored into my decision.
Great. A few days ago, on Monday the 23rd June, at Chit Chat 2.0, the Prime Minister again dodged the question.
Being terminated from the cabinet is a completely separate and distinct act than, for example, being thrown out of a party. Right? Senator Lacret chose to resign from the National Democratic Congress. No one forced him out, no one asked him to leave. I just want to conclude, I think anyone who enters governance and public policy ought to appreciate the consequences of what you're getting involved in. So I don't think this has anything to do in terms of his employability or any of those kinds of issues, because had he remained a member of the organization and continued to show his desire to serve the public, I'm sure there would have been countless opportunities for employability if he was so interested.
Okay. Did the loss of trust and confidence surround anything to do with the National Lottery Authority?
No.
Again, what could have gone so wrong? Is it because the senator/minister reported on and dealt with the corruption that marred the National Lottery Authority? Prime Minister looked us straight in the eye and said no. He discussed it with the permanent secretary, who, by the way, was removed from that ministry forthwith, and then brought his findings to the cabinet of Grenada. Was it because he gave the chairman of the board, Mr. William Batiste, his dismissal letter? The letter the Prime Minister had asked him to rescind, to take back from the chairman, pending his own investigation. You heard Mr. Lacret said after a while he had to, on more than one occasion, he had to ask the Prime Minister what's going on there with the investigation, right? Now my question was, why is it the Prime Minister did not fire the managing director? Now my question has always been, why didn't the minister fire the managing director, Ms. Cindy Henry? Why didn't he give her a letter as well, the partner in crime? So I found out that Ms. Henry was not hired by the PSC or any government ministry or so. She was actually hired. The managing director of the Lottery Authority is normally hired by the board of directors. But the decision to hire Ms. Henry, the chairman's girlfriend, was not made by the board of directors. Mr. William Batiste brought in his girlfriend on his own, without no interference, without no tendering, without nobody else saying, yes, we agree. Not the minister, the ministry, the PS, the board of directors. Brought her in and placed her as the managing director of the Lottery Authority. Mr. Batiste, the boyfriend, brought the girlfriend in and made her managing director. Minister Ron Redhead at the time, who was the minister then of sports, right? Minister Ron Redhead knew of it and said nothing. Ron Redhead knew what the chairman had done, brought in his girlfriend and gave her the job as managing director. He also knew Miss Cindy Henry was Mr. William Baptiste's girlfriend, had conversation with staff about it, promised he'll take it to the cabinet. But in the same breath, he expressed his reluctance because of the way the Prime Minister treats him. He talked about him being treated like a little boy. His words. Folks, the corruption in the NLA was first identified by Minister Ron Redhead as line minister with responsibilities for the National Lottery Authority. Ron knew of the $570,000 taken by William Baptiste for the renovation of the Victoria Park. And we know it was $275 for the actual renovation and $295,000 for the overrun. So $275,000 for the actual renovation and $295,000 for the overrun, a total of $570,000. Ron Redhead knew of it. The Prime Minister also knew. Ron Redhead knew that Cindy Henry and William Baptiste went against the wishes of, and his wishes as a matter of fact, and purchased the commercial building on Melville Street, even though he advised against it. Did Minister Ron Redhead address those matters as he planned to? And was that the reason he himself got fired? We don't know. As for Minister Lacret, again, what could have gone so wrong? Here is a gentleman who was praised as one of the persons responsible for the 2022 win of the NDC in the last general election.
To Hurricane Ivan and Emily and the devastation it caused to our nation and the people that lost loved ones and the vivid memory that is still in the minds of the Grenadian people. Our nation needs healing. We go back to the Great Recession in 2008 and how many people lost their jobs and was living in poverty. The memory is still vivid in the minds of the Grenadian, Carriaconian, and Piti Martinican people. Spirit of the living God, Grenada, Carriacou, and Piti Martinique, we lift our hands. Come on, Lassages. We lift our hands, and Father, we say, heal our land. We repent and we ask for forgiveness in the mighty name of Jesus for everything that we have given access to our shores. Father, every demonic agent, every satanic spirit, every consortium of demons that we have given access to our shores through marine spirits, through the importation of juju, through the importation of witchcraft demons and necromancy spirit, we rise as an army of warriors throughout Grenada, Carriacou, and Piti Martinique, and we arrest those demonic spirits, and we sound the alarm on Zion's holy mountain, and we let them know that their time in this nation has expired. Expired. We overrule, we override, we capsize, we overturn every satanic system of poverty and injustice that has kept us bound. We loose, we set ourselves free from mental slavery.
And some of you might remember the theatrical performances that the crowd supporters, members look forward to every rally, like this one in particular.
Possible. Sharon Roberts, report to your car as soon as possible. Quiet in the court. I said quiet in the court. And I don't want to be saying no appearance, Your Honor. Brothers and sisters, put your hands together and let's invite to the microphone Brother Jonathan Lacret.
But according to the staff of the NLA, Cindy Henry and William Baptiste are untouchable. They are rude and obnoxious to the staff, minister, and even the permanent secretary. Insolent. The question was asked to the minister, or Minister Lacret rather, or Mr. Lacret rather, he's not minister anymore, was to do with the administrative issues that is crippling the NLA.
Can you articulate or can you shed some light? I'm not too sure how much you can share. You were just saying here that there were financial improprieties. What were some examples of those financial improprieties that the accounting team, the financial team with the Lotteries Authority?
There were large sums of money being paid to a particular organization, and that particular organization was receiving those sums of money for the procurement. To investigate the matter, him and the learned Attorney General, and he insisted. I trusted that the Prime Minister was going to investigate the matter and get back to me with feedback as it relates to their findings. But that did not happen. And weeks passed, and I remember sending 2 very cordial emails to the Prime Minister, just reminding him that we said that we were going to have a sit-down meeting with the Board of Directors of the National Lotteries Authority to ascertain whether or not they are in the know as to what is happening as it relates to my findings. And the questions that I have re the building out of these skills training centers. I am still waiting for a response from these 2 emails. Beryl came first week of July, and that was indeed an opportunity to forget that something was happening at the National Lotteries Authority that needed to be addressed. Yes? And I allowed them the space to be able to take care of Carriacou and Petit Martinique, and also to look after our residents in St. Patrick as well as St. Andrew. And around the 3rd week of July, I did motion to the Prime Minister after a cabinet meeting that I would like to just have a brief chat with him, and he obliged. And we spoke, and I said, Prime Minister, is there going to be a time, and now that, we've gone to Carriacou, we've done assessments, etc., and we're now in the recovery and resilience stage in terms of putting preparations in place for recovery and resilience of Carriacou. Is there a time that we are going to be able to address the issue that I raised re the National Lotteries Authority? I do not know if the Honourable Prime Minister felt that I was prying too much, or maybe he felt that this guy is not letting up on this thing. I can't say. Yes. All I know is I walked into the cabinet on the 31st of July. My appointments were revoked and I was relieved of my duties.
All nice big words used by Mr. Lacret, all to describe the corruption and the fraudulent acts, the embezzlement of the National Lottery Authority funds. Mr. Lacret's trying his best to be gracious, trying his best to be gracious. Those two individuals, Mr. William Batiste, chairman of the National Lottery Authority, and his girlfriend, whom he hired as managing director of the authority, Miss Cindy Henry, gave her a $7,000 raise in salary compared to the immediate previous managing director. Is it true that the $7,000 extra goes to Mr. Batiste as a salary, though he's not a staff of the authority? He's the chairman of the authority. Now, these two individuals are the only two signatories on the NLA account. And when they are out of town, no financial transaction can take place. Information reaching me lately is that one of our sporting teams was denied traveling abroad recently because the lottery authority said they're unable or refused to pay for the tickets for the members of the team to travel. Now, as I understand it, the lottery authority is told that they have to sponsor the 2026 Character Games. I mentioned that to you already. The other sponsor, the CBI. Now, my guess is they're trumping up because funds must be running low. So they probably won't be able to sponsor anything or anyone else until next year when to sponsor the Character Games. Now, we are also aware that the Prime Minister said he found no credible information on the ongoing corruption inside the NLA. And I'll play it again for you, lest you forget. You heard all that Minister Lacret, former Minister Lacret said. He found, brought to the cabinet, to the PS, to the cabinet, to the Prime Minister. Yet for all, he said there's no credible information.
Would things like that worry you in terms of the optics politically? I mean,
no, I think
you know, there are a bunch of people now with too much time on their hands trying to get their job back because of corruption issues.
We're as transparent a government, I think, as Grenada has seen in my lifetime, for sure. And I think if any issues arises and there's credible evidence of stuff, as a Prime Minister, I'm prepared to deal with it. But what I will not...
Did you look into the lotto matter, though?
Yes, I looked
Because I looked into it, and there seemed to have been a bit of credibility to some of the issues.
I looked into the issue, and I just said to you, which is why I talked about how you handle conflicts in terms of what the legislation says and what has to happen, right? So I'm saying when people just simply make spurious allegations and come up with all kinds of fanciful stuff, you have to be careful that you don't allow people to draw you in and to make decisions as if you are Jesus Christ and he who is without sin cast the first stone.
The workers of the NLA are calling on the Prime Minister, Deacon Mitchell, who professed to be the advocate for the people, with workers in his DNA, to please advocate on their behalf. And I'm quoting, "We are asking the Prime Minister to please investigate the corruption that is happening inside the NLA." You heard Mr. Lacret saying that one worker met him in the supermarket and said to him, please come. And that at that meeting, a worker said, I am not going to go to jail for this. What else does the Prime Minister need? And although the Prime Minister said in that interview that the complaints are not credible, according to staff, he has never visited the NLA nor questioned any staff member for information. That is at that time. To date, I'm not sure if he went after that, right? But why should he, when he already knows that the complaints about Mr. William Baptiste and Ms. Cindy Henry are genuine complaints? The chairman and the general manager are money leeches, and I'm quoting here from the workers. They are using the NLA money to flaunt their lavish lifestyles. Workers are treated badly. They have no one to hear their burning issues. The general manager and the chairman will bankrupt the organization through their corrupt practices. Simon says he's calling on the Prime Minister and the Minister of Youth and Sports by 2. That is number 10, Ms. Delma Thomas, and the Senator Seville Francis, to do the right thing and remove the managing director and her lover, chairman of the board, Mr. William Baptiste, from the authority. Simon says he's also calling for the removal of the entire board of directors of the National Lottery Authority. It's called aiding and abetting the fraudulent and corrupt practices of the general manager and the chairman of the board. Members of the board have to know. Okay, he brought in Miss Cindy, he gave her the job. He supposed to have opened a skills training school on Scott Street. You guys are meeting where the school's supposed to be. Nothing. $200,000 for that. Now, Catwills, his company that died a long time ago, is now up and running, advertising from that same Scott Street building, selling everything under the sun. Where's the money? Where the money came from? This is a gentleman, when he was in the 2008 NDC, was owing a company in the UK for books he had ordered for this same Cartwheels that he couldn't pay for. When NDC came in, and he was a member of the director on that same lottery board, I think he was the deputy chairman. When NDC introduced their free school book program, he was one of the companies they gave monies to purchase books. When he sent the money to the UK, the company took all of the money from him because he was owing them. Of course, not knowing the money didn't belong to him. Listen, this thing in start now. The company took the government money. They had to scramble and work out all kind of simmy-dimmy to get him to still get the monies because he's a big NDC supporter. You understand me? But he did not like how he was treated then, and that's when he kind of deflected from the NDC and became a nation builder, I would assume, right? But this, it's a trend. When dogs suck an egg, it's sucking egg, right? Prime Minister Deacon Mitchell, are you saying, when you speak of this, that you're not getting credible information enough to fire this gentleman? Are you saying the fact that Mr. William Baptiste, chairman of the NLA board, and the managing director, Ms. Cindy Henry, his lover, and the only 2 signatories on the account are false. Are you saying that's not true? Prime Minister, isn't it credible information that Mr. Baptiste and Ms. Cindy Henry traveled to France in October of 2024 on a 1-day meeting, which no one else in the authority knew of, or if at all there was a 1-day meeting, costing the NLA $36,000? Prime Minister, they spent 2 weeks for a 1-day meeting. Do you believe such information is credible enough to investigate? Prime Minister, the fact that Mr. William Baptiste took on his own, without your knowledge as Minister of Infrastructure and former Minister of Youth at the time, Ron Redhead, without your knowledge, took $275,000 from the NLE to renovate the Victoria Park, and then took a further $295,000 called overruns. Are you saying such information is not credible enough to investigate? Shouldn't William Baptiste and Cindy Henry be fired on sight for such? It's every contract, huge contract this government had, ended up with overruns. I am hearing that the headquarters, the RGPF headquarters on the Carronage, had a $20 million overrun. I am doing my investigation to see what I come up to make sure it's true. But I'm asking you, Prime Minister, is that true? $20 million overrun? But don't forget, ministers were going to the contractor weekly for $10,000 here and $10,000 there and $3,000 there. So he would have ended up in an overrun. Folks, what else does the Prime Minister need to carry out an investigation on Mr. William Baptiste and Ms. Cindy Henry? Prime Minister, how do you know whether allegations are credible or not? How do you know? Did you or anyone representing you carry out an investigation inside the Lottery Authority concerning the corruption and the fraudulent practices of Mr. William Baptiste and Ms. Cindy Henry? I can answer that for you. No. The answer is no. Prime Minister, how would you know then if the allegations are credible or not? I am guessing you asked Mr. Baptiste, your friend and a nation builder colleague, whether or not he did those things. Or did you even? Because between you, me, and the doorpost, you know it's all true. One last question for the Prime Minister. Why didn't you give Senator Lacret the opportunity to answer to the allegations that brought you to fire him for lack of trust and confidence in him before you went to the Governor General, before you went to the cabinet? Why didn't you have a sit down with Senator Lacret? The same way you give William Baptiste, the crook, the opportunity to answer to the allegations. Prime Minister, you sat in that interview and told the nation, look at us in our eyes, and lied to us in order to cover up the corrupt practices of our friend, of your friend, Mr. William Baptiste and his lover, Cindy Henry. Folks, it's called aiding and abetting. What blatant deception. And to add insult to injury, the Prime Minister and his cabinet colleagues reinstated the entire board of directors of the National Lottery Authority, the NLA, from captain to crook for another 2-year reign. Government notice number 50, Cabinet at its meeting on the 16th of September 2024 approved the appointment of the following members of the board of the National Lottery Authority for a period of 2 years with effect from the 1st of November 2024, which of course will bring them to the end of the NDC term. Mr. William Baptiste, Chairman, Ms. Gail Purcell, Deputy Chairperson, Ms. Afi Ventu De Vega, Director as Legal Counsel, Mr. Sylvester Qualis, Director, Mr. Kareem Richards, Director, Mr. George Filbert, Director, Mr. Cecil Grenade, Director, totally ignoring the findings of the former Minister of Sports, Minister Lacret. The members of cabinet, other members, they just went along because the Prime Minister says so. The Prime Minister could do no wrong. The Prime Minister who's wise, the Prime Minister who's intelligent, the Prime Minister who lies, the Prime Minister who's deceptive, the Prime Minister who's turning a blind eye to the corruption that's taking place in the government of Grenada, the Prime Minister who wouldn't investigate the bribery of the Cliff Road project, that Prime Minister. For months I've been calling and asking for that investigation. Folks, to be continued. Folks, that's a wrap on today's episode of Simon Says. Always a pleasure conversing with you, keeping them honest. Thank you for joining us for yet another episode of Simon Says, where facts come first. I'm your host, Jenny Simon. See you next week, same time, same place, where we'll be back on Thursday. We'll be back on Thursday. See you now. Bye. Thank you for tuning in to Simon Says. To ensure that you never miss an episode, click subscribe and make sure to turn on the notifications by clicking on the notification bell icon. See you at the next episode.